Greetings and welcome to College Week Live's Undergraduate Application Seminar for Financial Aid for International Students. I am Elizabeth Chung and I am the Executive Director of the International Academic Center in Belgrade, Serbia, and we are the host institution to Education USA. I see I've got a couple of questions up here. I see that I have one gentleman who would like to know about this scholarship stuff, and we will be talking about this scholarship stuff today. I also have a question from a Mr. Barry, and the question about that is about graduate schools and programs, and today is for undergraduates. One thing just to clarify, that in American English, when we talk about graduate, we're talking about master's and doctorate, PhD programs, just to be sure we're on the same page. And the British, though, will call those postgraduate. So today is for undergraduate students. These are students that are in high school preparing to go to college. Although I know that College Week Live for Internationals also does have information on the graduate studies, and I have asked my esteemed colleague to check for a date and let me know when you can catch this information about the graduate process. For some of these today, but depending on the nature of your question, I may answer them just as soon as it pops up, and then others that I may want to take you through the entire process of this, because some of them I know are going to be covered in the slides. So just bear with me and do not become impatient. Okay, and yes, it is possible to get into school for undergraduate studies in engineering. Okay, you all have a lot of questions. Okay, and studying English as a second language, there are also many programs for going to the U.S., and many of them are affiliated with English, with major universities where they have English as a second language programs. And so this is indeed possible, because the question is that, hello, I'm a Brazilian Portuguese teacher and I'd love to study English as a second language. However, I'm going to go ahead and go to our slides and talk to you all today about financial assistance for undergraduate students. Typically, first I want to thank everyone in the Education USA network who've been of great help, including my colleague Vedrana Lakovic. She is our undergraduate advisor here for Education USA at IAC Serbia. Nancy Kedeku, who is a REAC for Education USA, she coordinates the region of Africa, and most of what you're going to see here today is the collaborative effort of Education USA advisors throughout the world. I am not sure if you all are familiar with Education USA, but Education USA is the State Department's official source of U.S. higher education. And throughout this presentation, you will see the address educationusa.state.gov, and this is where you can find more information about higher education, including 5-step programs and other sources of information. And you can find advising centers in your country that also will have information quite specific to your country. Okay, one of the first things that students want to know about undergraduate funding is, a lot of students want to know, is there money? Can I get money? Because for many students today, this is the biggest question. And you can see from this little chart, here is the data, and that many students, a large number, do pay from personal and family funds, but you can see that nearly 11% of students are receiving financial aid from the colleges and universities where they apply. And typically, this is always going to be our target. Okay, and just to let you know on graduate financial advising, this seminar, because someone had asked about this, was organized yesterday. However, all these seminars will be online and you will have an opportunity to revisit these. Okay, now we will move to our next slide. Okay. Okay, some of the first things to help you, and yes, good morning to the Bahamas as well. It's quite chilly here. Wish I were in the Bahamas today. Basic facts. In the U.S., there are more than 4,500 education higher ed institutions, and of those, a little over 1,000, as you can see, will give some form of financial aid. These numbers are typically important because it helps you get to thinking right about the process. So you can see that there are 113 institutions that are going to regularly award funding, and then we have records that show about 146 schools that have awarded full funding at least once. Now, when we say full funding, one thing that's very important for students is it's not just tuition, it is the cost of your education. Full funding, also known as the full ride, means that you will receive not just the tuition, but you will receive your housing. You will probably do a little bit of work-study program on campus, which means you will also be earning some money, usually pocket money. And you can see how this breaks down with different institutions. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, 'tis thirsty work here. And you can see between $10,000 and $20,000, about 382, and 20 and 30, you've got 139, and in addition, between $30,000 and $40,000, 46 and 44 that award average aid above 40,000. But once again, we go back to 113 that will give you a full ride. Okay, to understand the types of financial aid, there is need-based and merit-based. Merit-based tends to be built around your achievements and the holistic process of U.S. higher education, which means that they are going to take a good look at what you have achieved, at your grades, community service, your accomplishments outside of school, extracurriculars. All of these types of things go into the mix to make merit-based aid. Many times students that have athletic abilities will get athletic scholarships through Division I and Division II. But occasionally schools that do not give athletic scholarships will nevertheless consider a student's athletic excellence, particularly, let's say, a student who is captain of their team and has established a leadership role. That can also be taken into merit in a sense. And whereas need-based is based on the financial situation. One of the things that we try to tell people, though, many of our students here in Serbia will say, well, I've got that need-based down, and you can't get much needier than this. But even need-based funds can be competitive because it's also about your contribution. It's not enough to just be needy, unfortunately, because you may have someone who is not only as needy as you, but that who has done a lot. As one of our students said that went to one of the very selective schools, and he was very smart. He was a very talented young man. He's gone off to PhD studies now, but he told me that when he got there, he felt a fool when he met another student who also had full financial aid based on a combination of merit and need. And he said, you know, Elizabeth, this guy built an irrigation system for his village. and that he felt very lacking. So you want to be aware of this when you start assessing yourself and when you start preparing to make this happen. Okay, so you can see these types of financial aid. And so need-based admission, when they talk about something being need-blind, they're also talking about the fact, and these are the very selective schools, that they will let students in without looking to see if you have enough money to pay. If they take you, they will cover the cost of your education. Okay? And sometimes you can see that financial aid is earmarked. In other words, it's for specific countries or for specific measures. And some things are just standard that they have a flat amount. But always be aware that sometimes you may come from a country where the government there or there are various institutions that will specifically have funding for you because of your nationality, your ethnic group, something you participate in. And that's why whenever you register for exams such as the SAT, they will ask you so many questions. Or I see someone ask about the UFC system. What is the quantum of scholarship available for University of California? And some of those, although that tends to be, a lot of that is state aid, and they do give some sports scholarships, lots of sports scholarships. One thing is that when you fill out the University of California application, which they have their own system, you will see that it asks you a whole bunch of questions like, are you one of these? Have you ever done this? And this is where they are looking to see if you qualify for certain financial aid. It is usually the state schools are not always as easy to get financial aid when you're an international, because those are supported by U.S. tax dollars. But there are always exceptions. And this is where you really have to research the website and pay particular attention to what they have to say about international students. Because I have seen some state schools that are quite generous and from program to program. Okay, and the question about how to suggest for one to get financial aid, we will be covering that. Getting financial aid outside the university is external aid, and it can be very competitive, as you will see as we go through this. Okay, so when you are looking for merit-based, typically they're looking at your academic achievements, your high test scores. Do you have any talents, athletic abilities, leadership potential, other personal characteristics? And once again, as we said, need-based is looking at your family income and your financial need. They also consider other merits. And so these are the things, the themes that you want to keep in mind at all times, is that they do look at what you've done academically, competitions, things you've done outside school. Also, they will look very hard at your essay and how you present yourself, how well you write, and these kind of things. The more competitive that your application is, the better your chances are to receive substantial financial aid. Okay, and of course, the more you need, the greater the competition will be. A lot of students that meet full need are going to admit less than 5% of their applicants. So you have to be aware of that. Okay, once again, we go back to the reality check. If you're need-based, if you feel that you qualify for need-based aid, you have to realize you're going to be competing with other students who are also needy. Okay, and you want to be sure that you don't have someone in there who just came back from the Olympics, okay? It's going to always depend who else is in the applicant pool. And we try to tell students, you cannot control who else applies, but you must focus on making your application absolutely sparkle. Okay? Now there will be some different rules for domestic and international students, so you want to pay careful attention to that and be aware of that when you research the website. You want to be absolutely certain that when they're offering things, they're talking about what they are offering to international students. Okay? Typically, like for example, a lot of students hear that, oh, someone got financial aid at this school, I will apply there. The budgets and the policies can change from year to year. You want to stay with the official school websites. And one of the things is that often students will ask for questions such as financial aid. Can I have financial aid? And you'll get a letter back that says, we don't have financial aid for international students. So what you want to ask is, the question that you want to ask if you write is, how do international students typically cover the cost of their education at your school? Because financial aid they're usually talking about filling out a federal form. And what you want to look at in this case are scholarships, fellowships, and other programs that will be a good fit for you as an international student. In many colleges, if you have good grades and you can send some questions to the international student admission officer or the international studies office, they can usually direct you to the proper person who will have information on exactly what we can offer to an international student at a school. They look at also, how much money do you need? They will want to look at your family funds, your family assets, how much money your family earns. You will have some forms to fill out, and eventually they will reach what they call an EFC. It's an expected family contribution, and that's based on how much money they think that your family can afford to invest or contribute toward your education. Okay, they will also, once again, you need to be very aware of any funding that is provided by your local government or sponsors. Okay, you will also be able to work on campus, which is, sometimes it's very different. I know that here in here in our part of the world, which is Eastern Europe, where school is very hard and very demanding, that often the situation is such that the studying is considered the student's job, and there will be no working anywhere else. However, the U.S. culture does provide work on campus, and there's quite a bit of camaraderie in going through this, and that pretty much you find that other people are also working on campus. At first it can seem a bit odd if you come from a culture where it's unusual for anyone to have a job until they finish college, but so many of our students have talked to us about going through this program and how much it helped them. And so do not hesitate to avail yourself of that opportunity. Plus, it does give you work experience. Okay, two things that to be aware of is that it is a competitive process. And one of the quotes from an admission officer once was, basically, we give them what we think they are worth. And by that, what they mean is that it's competitive. How much have you accomplished? What have you done? For example, they like to look at community service. When they look at how active you are in your community, I have to tell you, it looks kind of fishy if all of your humanitarian activities started at the point of application. So often, the successful profiles are built over many, many years of work, at least from high school, from the time you entered high school onward. On the other hand, sometimes students do not think through how interesting and different they are. For example, I had a brilliant student from a high school for young math talents that it was very hard for me to get it through his head, but finally I did, that he was interesting because he participated in bird watching. And this was something very unique and different that he brought to the campus. Another student, also a big talent in physics and these things, he was working really hard to think of some community service. And he was actually so talented that he had left his hometown and lived here in the capital city where he studied at a high school for talents. And he asked me at one point, he said, well, every summer when I go home and I do this math and science camp for the kids in the neighborhood, would that count as community service? And I'm just like, Mama Mia, of course that's going to count for community service. What are you thinking? And so this is one way you want to look at it, is you want to thoroughly look at yourself and see what you've done with your life. Ask your family, ask your friends, ask teachers. You know, sit with other people and talk to them so you're sure that you evaluate your entire self-worth. Because often we don't see that how good we really are, and that we overlook activities that we have engaged in to help others. Another thing to remember is that financial aid is not something that they provide for an individual's self-enrichment. In other words, they want to recognize your merit, but they also want to see, what is your vision? What are you going to do for the world? You're in high school. You should have these tremendous dreams. When you're in high school, you don't just think you're bulletproof. You think you can change the world. And get in there and talk about dreaming to do that. It matters a lot to them. Okay, and now some questions to think about before we get to your questions. Okay, you want to look and you want to know about what percentage of undergraduate students actually receive aid at schools. There are several things. There is a fabulous college navigator set up by the Education Department at ed.gov. Okay, you've also got college data, which has some sites where you can look, but also you want to be looking at what kind of funding they're providing specifically for you as international students. Okay, you also want to look at the average size of the financial aid award. Once again, your Education USA Center, frequently, for example, we have records. I can tell you last year where students went, how much funding they have, and also we can look at the entire world as a whole from things that we report to one another. We keep records. And so often, depending on your need, we can help you find schools that will be good fits and where you have a good chance. Okay, you want to look at the merit-based scholarships, and the other thing is you want to know, how can I apply for these? Sometimes you're considered as soon as you fill out the application. At other points, you have to apply for specific scholarships. You really have to research carefully because of the fact that there are more than 4,500 colleges and universities in the U.S. Your Education USA advisor can help some, but there's simply no way that we can be certain of everything. And so when you're looking at a school, you want to be very thorough about this particular information. Okay? And another thing is the universities, do they disregard need? Okay, as we said before, if they're need blind, they're going to let you in, and after they decide they want you, then they start sorting out how much money they're going to need to give to you in order to help you make this happen. On the other hand, some schools, basically because they don't want to admit a bunch of students who don't show up, will actually not offer admission to students because they don't have an intention of funding them. And this is something that you want to be very careful of. It is a disaster when a student sets up an entire portfolio of schools to apply to, and at the very end, when you look through it, you realize that this student is basically applying to schools that are going to immediately disregard this student because this student doesn't have enough funds to cover the cost of the education. So then you're going to be sitting here holding hands for one rejection letter after another, and nobody wants that. Okay, you want to know about the university. How do they determine financial need? And we'll talk about some of the documents that students typically fill out and how much is available. Okay, and you want to see about work-study opportunities. Are these available for you at the university? Do they have this type of program? Okay, and also you want to be very certain about the cost of room and board on campus. And when you're talking about financial aid, you want to know, is it going to cover tuition? Or is it going to cover tuition and room and board? That can make a great difference. That I've seen applications from kids going to very, very low price community colleges, but they're in Manhattan. And then once again, you've got these giant cost of living for living in Manhattan. And so you want to be very much aware of this. Many students find ways to fund through community colleges. For example, my son did his first 2 years at a community college, and that it saved a great deal of money. It was a great thing, but he also had a place to live. So you want to be aware that although some of these community colleges have good deals, you also have to plan your cost of room and board. In some community colleges, everything is quite affordable in these situations. Okay, some of the frequently asked questions. One is whether you can get a scholarship for all 4 years or for 1 year. Most typically, the terms of the scholarship, if it's merit or need, they will ask you to maintain a certain GPA. As long as you maintain that GPA and make academic progress, typically the funds are going to be there year after year. But this is where you want to read the fine print. Student athletes also need to know that Division I schools can now offer renewable scholarships. So they can offer you a scholarship that will automatically renew every 4 years, or they can offer you a scholarship that is reviewed each year and the coach decides. And you want to be aware of that, because having the scholarship automatically renewed all 4 years, as long as you make your GPA and you stay in compliance, this is a little bit better deal than depending on the good graces of the coach from year to year, because coaches can move, programs can change. So you want to be very much aware of whether you're getting a scholarship for 1 year or whether you're getting a scholarship that you can renew each year. Okay, yes, it is possible to get loans in American banks to pay for your education, but usually you need a U.S. cosigner, and that would be either a U.S. citizen or an eligible resident, which is also known most popularly as the green card holder. If you have one in your family or someone close to you, but you want to be certain that people will follow through and do this. Also, be sure and look at your own country. Your own country may have student loans and ways that students can pay for education abroad. Once again, I will say this over and over, check out Education USA, and that should be the first source of information. Talk to the advisor in your country, because he or she is going to be the one that's going to know exactly what's happening for students from your country. I can tell you about Serbia, I can tell you about Montenegro, and I can tell you a lot about what I think or how it might work, but that is not as valid as having a conversation with the Education USA advisor in your own country. Public or private institutions, typically you will see more funding on merit and need in private institutions. Although some public institutions do offer some types of funding that someone may have put in for international students, sometimes they will have an endowment specifically to go for funding of international students. Athletic scholarships, you can often get those at public institutions. And I've seen some other unusual situations. When I first began doing this for Education USA, I had 3 young men tell me they were preparing, and we were working on SAT, and I asked them what they were preparing for, and they said an athletic scholarship. And I looked at these brilliant guys with glasses and looking rather slight, and I said, "What is your sport?" And they smiled and said, "Chess." And they actually were in a school where they were chess champions, and they were able to fund their entire education, including their engineering degrees, through the chess team. And so these are things that you want to look at, and it was at a public institution. Yes, you can work in the U.S., you can work through work study, and also after the first year, if you will go to your international student office, these are where your best friends forever are on campus, the international student office, and talk to them in case you've had a change in circumstances or a situation like that. And then through filing paperwork, you can typically get permission to work off campus for 20 hours. But my understanding is that that is after the first year, and I would also encourage you to talk to the International Student Office. These regulations change from one year to the other, and so you need to always check, because what I tell you may be true today, but next year in 6 months, regulations can change and it can be a different story, okay? When you talk about being able to cover part of your study expenses, as this question says, the more you can bring to the table, the larger number of institutions that you can apply to and hope for some financial aid. Yes, it definitely makes a difference. As I said, when you're looking at applications, look at it from your point of view. Okay, you've got a bunch of applications where everybody is contributing exactly null, zero, void, the empty set, and then you come to someone who is, their family is willing to pay $5,000 a year. This is a person who's working very hard to invest. Also, as you saw at the beginning, we have a limited number of schools that will give full financial aid to a student, but we have more than 1,000 that will give some. And so the difference of having in your application pool 113 schools as opposed to being able to select your schools to apply to out of a pool of 1,000, naturally this is going to make things better for you and greatly increase your chances. Yes, some community colleges can provide financial aid. We especially see a lot of student athletes at community colleges, but you want to be aware of that, and it can vary from school to school greatly. Many community colleges, because their funding is based on not just state government but also local city taxes, they simply do not offer those type of situations for international students. So there's just a lot of research involved to make certain of what your situation is. Okay, so you need to start early, and you do need to do a lot of research, and you need to check the policy on financial aid, scholarships, work-study opportunities for international students. You need to select your documents on time. One of the most common documents that students will fill out for schools to accept is the College Board International Student Financial Aid Application. It's the CSS profile, and you can find that at the College Board site where you register for SAT. And they also have a College Board International Student Certification of Finances guidelines. Typically, some schools may ask for their own documentation, but if you apply to, say, 5 to 10 colleges, chances are you're going to run into this College Board file sooner or later. So, and typically most of the schools and what they ask you for will follow this same pattern. It's very different to see a school asking for something wildly unusual. Okay, here are some resources that you can look at. Once again, the educationusa.state.gov, and when you go there you will see a place for international students, and I really suggest you start with Find Your Advising Center and see where your nearest Education USA center is. There are more than 400 of these in 170 countries. Also, you can follow and sign up to receive newsletters where you get scholarship and information. Most of our sites all have Facebook pages. We have a Facebook page here in Serbia, and I'm sure that your country also has an Education USA Center's Facebook page. Then there's collegeboard.com, where you find the international student profile. You've also got the International Financial Aid and College Search, which this is where someone would look for getting financial aid. Is, I think, Condora Varma asked me about getting aid outside the universities would be one place where you would look. And I'm really sorry if I'm butchering anyone's name. My name is Elizabeth Chung, and so you can quietly butcher it to yourself if you like. Okay. And also for internationalscholarships.com. These are some sources that you can look at and that will help you. And now I'm going to start looking at questions and answering these as best I can, and I really want to thank you all for your time. It means a lot for me to get to talk to students from all over the world, and I hope you found this informative. Now let's see what we've got for questions. Okay. My daughter has gotten an admission offer in engineering and to apply for the school. Okay, they asked to fill out the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid, but I guess FAFSA, F-A-F-S-A, goes by, is not for international students. No, FAFSA is not for international students, but many schools will ask you to use the FAFSA to fill it out while they assess your needs. One reason is because it's the form that the colleges and universities are most familiar with, and so they're used to that, and they will ask you to fill that out. This is another situation where I would really encourage you to take the admission offer and do get in touch with your local Education USA Center, because they will be the best qualified to help you in filling out those documents, simply because they understand how finances work within the countries, because that's where they work. Just as I know that sometimes I will tell schools that we don't have this kind of document, but instead we can get a company or a bank to provide this type, and that's why it's very important to stay with your Education USA Center. And by the way, you probably need to know that nearly every service at Education USA Centers are free, or there may be a nominal, very small membership fee. When you get into test prep and long, in-depth private consultations, that can change, but generally it's quite easy to get this kind of information, and it's typically not going to cost anything. Okay, the next question is about financial aid to prospective Caribbean students. Once again, I would say to go to your local Education USA Center, that you can click and find it on a map, and frequently they have a page there. For example, we have a list of what students can get locally in Serbia, and your Education USA Center local to your Caribbean location will also have a list of these type of scholarships that are provided from the location where the student lives. At the same time, you can often Google just go to Google and ask about U.S. college admission scholarships for Caribbean students, and you can see what comes up, because frequently students are in situations where, okay, someone from the Caribbean goes to the U.S., finishes college, does quite well, and then they decide that they would like to leave money at their college for another Caribbean student. And so, although that can be kind of a hit and miss, often your Education USA Center will know about these type of opportunities, and you can also search on your own to see. Okay, I hope that helped. Now, another one. Okay, that you want to know. Okay, Shaido, that you would like us to speed through the facts. Okay. Unfortunately, it requires a lot of research. You want to know about specific universities that provide full funding or just full tuition scholarships. As I said, there are about 113 that we can count on for full funding, including room and board. These are usually highly selective schools. I would be loath to try to name them all because I might leave one out. But once again, this data and this information is kept in the Education USA offices, and I would suggest that you contact them. You can also look, you can just go to Google and you can look at need blind schools and you can get a list there. You can also go to the Annapolis group and see about those schools. You can look at private liberal arts schools that are offering full funding to international students because they tend to be quite generous. And so the main thing is, whenever you are going after full funding, which is going to be harder to get than full tuition, it's not that difficult to get a full tuition waiver. But when you're looking at that, you're also looking at a very competitive situation. So you just want to be aware of that. And as you look through that list, as I said, I really hate to start naming schools because I am so afraid that I will leave a school out, or I will talk about schools that we've had experience with in Serbia. But really the best and most knowledgeable person is going to be your Education USA advisor in country. Okay, when you ask about, I have a question, is it for 4 years? And I think that we covered that usually it is for 4 years, but that you want to read the fine print. And this is, I know I keep saying, go to Education USA, go to Education USA. But honestly, the U.S. State Department has set up more than 400 of these centers specifically for international students. And these are the people that can look through the fine print of your offers and help you make sure that it's for all 4 years. Okay? Or maybe you just need it for 1 year. But this is a good person to go to who will know the system quite well and be able to help you. Okay, I hope that helps you a little bit now. Okay, yes, can I study in the USA without doing TOEFL? I have done IELTS and scored 6 bands, so can I study in the USA? Okay, as most of you probably are becoming rapidly aware, the U.S. higher education system is very, very decentralized. So, you will find that requirements can vary from university to university, but usually not wildly. Okay. However, many schools do accept IELTS, and if you go to the IELTS site, I am almost certain that they can give you an up-to-date list of U.S. colleges and universities that are accepting IELTS and what band they require. But we see TOEFL, the ETS TOEFL exam, remains the most widely accepted English language exam for admission into higher education in the entire world. However, IELTS is coming very close moving up rapidly. And so if you're holding an IELTS and you prefer to take your IELTS into the admission process with you, all you have to do is track this with IELTS, and they will give you a list of schools that accept IELTS scores. Okay, I hope that helps somewhat. Now let's see what's that. Okay, is social service considered as extracurricular activities? Okay, you could put that as extracurricular, but if you have an area that asks for community service, for heaven's sakes, put it there. Get that written down into community service, because it shows that if you're looking for financial aid, you're asking them to give you something. And when you have performed social service, it shows that you've given something. Okay, rather than a student who's saying, oh, if I get in, I will do so much for the world. And you want to let them know right there that you have already started making your contribution. I cannot emphasize how important that is. Always happy to see that. Okay, the A-levels in the AP system. The question is whether the Cambridge Board of Education, the A-levels, are considered on par with the AP system. The A-levels will be considered for advanced standing. Now, where it gets a little different is that students who have taken AP, Advanced Placement Exams, which are typically offered through the American system, their grade point average can be bumped up above 4.0 as a result of taking these exams. And with the Cambridge A-levels, this is not necessarily the case. In fact, it's not the case at all as far as I know. However, they do take into account the highly competitive level of your A-level commitment to studying and then having an exam at the end of 2 years. Okay, so it will make a difference. When they look at your grades and they try to determine how competitive your program is for financial aid, they're going to look at the challenge of the courses, they're going to look at the number of A-levels you took, as well as look at the number of APs and how much you've challenged yourself. For example, here, our students study anywhere from 13 to 15 subjects a semester. And when you see something like that, it may not be IB or AP or A-level, but when you see students studying that many subjects, you realize you're in a very competitive program. So yes, they will look at that and evaluate that. They all are very familiar with A-levels as well as IB programs. Okay, the next question is whether we can study for a bachelor's degree in the U.S. by only doing IELTS or not, and what are the colleges and universities that take students like these. Okay, it sounds to me like you are looking for SAT optional schools, and for that you can go in and Google SAT optional, and an organization called fairtest.org will give you a list of SAT optional schools. But you want to be very careful with that list, because down at the bottom it's got a lot of little footnotes that explain what everything means, and that some students, they will also look very hard at your grade point average, and sometimes it can be difficult if the students allow let me see how to put this. Let us say that students allow you to submit SATs, or you can decide not to submit SATs. And you can get in a situation that if someone else in the application pool, if another international student, especially from your country or your region, submitted really high SAT scores, and you chose not to, it could damage their decision to give financial aid. On the other hand, of course, it always works backwards. If the student submitted those scores and they were so bad, then it can help you. but that you want to, when I start helping students try to move around standardized testing because they're not very comfortable with it, that I know that I really, for financial aid, I really need to see a pretty stellar record of GPA, excellent letters of recommendation, well positioned in the upper 10% of the class, hopefully a community service. So you want to think about these things as you put things into the mix. Okay, it can be very competitive. The question is, how is the competition for financial aid, considering that I'm an international student and my nationality is Indian? Okay, once again, you know that you are competing for a place with a lot of other aspiring students from your region. So it can indeed be competitive. The first thing that I would tell you is to, by the way, you've got one of the most active Education USA centers in the world all over India, so please do go visit them. And they're very good at putting you in this mix. I'm a small country advisor. There are about 8 million people here, and that's the total population, so a smaller student population. But your advisors there could tell you a lot about this. However, what I personally would do with a student in your situation is I would want to see really good numbers. I would like to see very strong quantitative GPAs, where you rank in the class, and then I would start looking at qualitative and to see what other activities you've participated in, what are your outside interests, what are you passionate about, what makes you a unique person, and then I would force you on an essay writing mission to write and get that essay perfectly crafted and honed so that it would make an excellent impression on the admission committee. Because there may be a lot of students applying from your country, but the point is some of them get in and some of them get a lot of financial aid. And as I tell students when it comes to this, when they are looking at competitive situations and they say, do I have a chance? And I say, you have a better chance than the person who never applied. I've never seen any of those people get in. Okay, I hope that helped. Oh, Luca, Bobochich, hey, Jesse Luca. Okay, let me see that, let's see, 26 want to get an undergraduate degree. Okay, this is about going back to school after several years, and what this would be called, when you've been out of school for several years, you finish high school, you do some other things with your life, and then you say, I'm ready to go back and I want to get more education, and the key operative term here is to look for schools that will accept you and provide you with financial aid as a non-traditional student. Now the question is, if you have not taken SAT or TOEFL, but you're registered to take these and planning to take them in January 2014, are you late? It's going to definitely cut down on the number of schools. For example, as most of you are probably aware, a lot of the application deadlines close in December, and so you would be submitting your application with SAT and TOEFL pending. And so that's not ideal. But what I can tell you about this, my dear friend from Cernagora, is that we have online advising sessions here specifically for students in Montenegro, and our undergraduate advisor, Ms. Vedrana Lakovic, could talk to you about this. And although you are not, you're cutting it very close for this year, I would not advise you to give up, because I've been doing a lot of research on non-traditional students, and there are some pretty amazing opportunities out there depending on what's going on in your at your time. And so I would say for this question that you would follow up with us, because we do handle Education USA right now for Montenegro. Okay, I hope that helps. Okay. Okay, we have a student now, another student from India, and the question here is about the family. The maximum amount that the family can pay is 15,000. One of the things that I have looked at this, apart from the schools that award need blind financial aid, okay, the advising centers, once again in India, they track data in a way that is most excellent, and they can probably tell you which schools you could get enough of a discount to actually pay to keep it 15,000 or less. And also, I look often at college data and try to look at those prices there to see what you can get into for 15,000 a year. But the main thing is that the most experienced people, especially in a country with large student population, is once again going to be your Education USA advisors. And I would encourage you to go see them. We just finished a webinar that they presented us with on how they track financial aid, and it's a truly amazing system. So they can give you some excellent information on that. Okay, someone is asking about Berea and Berea College in Berea, Kentucky. Berea is free of charge if you are accepted. This is absolutely true, and the students work on the campus. Okay, this is a wonderful school. I cannot say enough about their unique way of doing things. There are a couple of other schools that also do this. I'm trying to remember the names of them. I'm so sorry because they have slipped my mind at this moment. I know I'm wildly looking, going, where are those books that will tell me that? But also, one of their students went on to win a Nobel Prize in chemistry. But this school was set up for hardworking people in the area of Kentucky and to give them a chance for college. And so, yes, you become part of you work, you run the school, you help them in the kitchen with all manners of things, and it is a wonderful experience. And I would encourage you to consider making the application, because yes, it is true that that they do give financial aid, and that it is free to go there. I think there is now a small, very nominal fee for students, but I do not think it's very high. So I would definitely suggest you look at that school. Okay, now a student is talking about having changed schools in 11th grade, and that the new school was demanding, and unfortunately the grades have taken a hit, and there's a downward trend. How will it affect your eligibility? Okay, this is never a fabulous thing, but it's also something that the application will usually give you a chance to address. Also, get with the teachers at your new school that you get along with and that you do well in their class. And what I would like you to do is to go toward these teachers, visit with them, make an appointment, and ask them about the kind of letters of recommendation that you can get, and try to write this situation as quickly as possible. I know that there's a transition point, and so you want to be very careful with that. But do try to get letters of recommendation. The school change, admission officers, they know you're young, you're in high school, changing schools, it's a big deal. And so you can offset some of the damage, but you need to get with the professors in the subjects that you really shine and get some very good recommendations on that. Um, this question is whether the tuition fee is fixed when you're admitted for all 4 years, or can that increase year over year? This is a very good question. The tuition can indeed increase, and one of the things you want to know is, will the financial aid increase as well? In some cases, yes, in some, no. Once again, you want to read the fine print on your financial aid agreement with the schools. The question is whether it's smarter to apply only to colleges that give need-based aid to international students. Um, it depends on the situation, but if you have great merit going on and you've been involved in a lot of activities, you should look at schools that value that. You can go to the Government College Navigator, and you can also look at College Data. But a College Navigator is the government at ed.gov, their official service, and you can often see how much they put in, how much schools put into their admission policy in terms of if they consider SATs, or do they consider mainly GPA, or these things. Okay, so that varies from school to school, but you want to do your research and be aware of it. I'm not sure why you would want to apply only for need-based aid and not merit. So, because the problem with need-based, as we discussed before, I just want to recap and tell you that the problem with looking only for need-based aid is that these schools are also going to tend to attract a lot of needy students that have done a lot of fabulous things. Okay, and then I hope you're not confusing that with need blind. Okay, athletic scholarships. The question is, how much cost can or will an athletic scholarship cover? The most frequent offers we see that would be considered what they call a full ride, which is full ride covers everything, would be athletic scholarships. It will vary from sport to sport, but typically that's true. Okay, the next question is about student visas, and that they want you to show you can fund your education for 4 years. And the question here is, if you can't do that and your education will be funded through scholarships and government loans, what should you do then? Once again, the International Student Office at the university, those are your new best friends forever. They send you a document. Usually it's an I-20. And on the I-20, it will have how much it costs to go to school, and then in the other column it will talk about how much money you're getting from government loans, how much money you're getting through scholarships, and the main thing is that both columns need to add up and be equal. And so when you get that, if you have, for example, a student that received a full scholarship, let's say the whole cost of education and attendance is $40,000, they got $40,000 scholarship. So when they go and show that I-20 at the counter, they will not ask to see any further money because the school has officially signed off and said, we got this. Okay? Okay, is it all right? The student asked if I could show my funding only for the first year, and then as my studies continue, keep updating my financial resources. Okay, for that, I would direct you to the local consular office in the U.S. Embassy to send them an email and ask them about this. I know the answer for Serbia is yes, indeed, year by year. I would really feel like I was overstepping my boundaries by a lot if I tried to account for how each embassy and consular handles the situation in country. Okay, so that one I'm going to pass rather than play. Okay, I'm sorry, but do talk to your Education USA Center or write to the consular office of your U.S. Embassy. They've usually got an email. Okay, the question, if I had a green card, can I apply for an international scholarship? Okay, green card changes everything for you, and it changes it in a very positive way. Okay, you will see that the scholarships that say for U.S. citizens or eligible resident, you with a green card are the eligible resident. So you are in good shape on that. Okay, I'm trying to see how many more of these questions. Okay, now we have gone over a little bit, and so I'll take a couple more questions, and then okay, that will be it. Okay, one question says, my counselor says I should apply to some safety schools, but even if I get into those, I might not be able to afford them as they have much less aid to offer to international students. Always apply to safeties. Listen to your counselor. This is a good idea. Some safeties do give financial assistance, and in fact, some of the safeties will be so glad for what an international student can provide on campus that I tell people, look to the Midwest. Go to the Midwest, look at the private liberal arts schools, see what kind of grades you have, see what all you bring to the table, and give those schools a shot, because quite frequently they're always looking for the diverse experience. Okay, the full scholarship. Okay, we talked about that throughout the presentation. And once again, you want to look at some of the schools are need blind. You want to look at selective schools. And I would say to definitely go in to your Education USA Center and speak to your advisor. Once again, Education USA, state.gov. And just as I know Serbia, and I was delighted to see someone from the region that I could speak a little bit with, you will find the same kind of reception at an Education USA Center in your neighborhood. Okay, I think that our time is up now, and for that I am very sorry. I would have loved to have answered every single question, and I know how important financial aid is to each and every one of you. But once again, you've got the list up here of places to look, and I can just promise you that if this was of any help to you whatsoever today, that your Education USA advisor in your country will be the one who can really do absolutely the best job of helping you. And I want to thank all of you for attending, and to please provide any feedback to College Week Live that they ask for, and be a good participant and let us know how we can keep serving you, serving the student community, and making this better each time. Okay, thank you all, and have a great day or a great evening depending on where you are. Thanks so much.